Hello, Tania.
Hey. Oh, how pretty.
How are you?
Fine. I like this.
My scarf?
Yeah, nice.
Thank you. Yes. I think I bought a couple once I realized we were going to be on Zoom for a long time. So I was like, oh, okay.
Nice, nice. I have been having very good talks with Kiko.
Oh, good.
Yeah. We have been, yeah.
Oh, that's great. Okay, sorry. David, are we live, ready to go?
You are live and ready to go.
Okay.
Oh my God.
Oh gosh, wait. Okay, so we're live and ready to go. All right, I'm going to change my view. Speaker. Is that what I want? Sorry. Okay. Sorry. We'll go back to this. So we're live and ready to go. So I am so excited to be here today with Tania León, our composer of the year, composer in residence. And gosh, okay, I am overwhelmed with excitement because Tania, I have loved your music since I first got into the field. I have listened to tape cassettes of your music. Yes, that's how long it's been. Yes, I mean, so I just think your story is so fascinating. Your music is so interesting. And so when we got the chance to apply for an Amplifying Voices grant with New Music USA, you were who I wanted. And so I was so thrilled when I got the call from New Music USA saying that it all worked out and that we were selected and that we would get to have a commission from you. And I could not have been happier.
Thank you so much.
It is such an honor to get to work with you. And we have some people that are joining and getting to know you in advance of your performance next week. And would you mind I can either ask you a question or I'll just say, would you tell us a little bit about what you're working on now or a little bit about you? What would you like to share?
Yes, I am finishing a song cycle and then I want to write a piece for the Conference of Reeds Instruments. And the piece is going to be for Monica Ellis, bassoonist. And then after that, I am doing a piece for the League of American Orchestras.
Oh.
In honor of Jesse Rosen.
Oh. Oh, does Jesse know that?
Yes, he does.
Oh, good. Oh, that's wonderful. Oh, that's so meaningful to him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, one of the things that's fascinating to me about you is that you came here from Cuba in 1967. And as I was listening to some of your music, I was like, am I hearing that? What was that experience like for you?
Well, I mean, an experience that is puzzling still to me because I was en route to France. I arrived as a pianist out of the conservatory, and my dream was actually to continue to Paris to enroll at the Paris Conservatoire, study with Nadia Boulanger, because my training is French, and from day one, everything was solfège. So I knew that that was going to be a good fit, but fate has me here speaking with you.
Oh, wow. So did you make it to Paris at all, or were you?
Yes, I made it to Paris, but in a very different circumstance, because I arrived with the Dance Theater of Harlem as a conductor, and we did a season at the Châtelet, and that's how I arrived in Paris many years after my arrival. Yeah.
Now, how did you connect with did you speak English when you got here?
No, I didn't.
Oh, wow.
But, that's the power of music, through music, you don't have to speak a language. You just have to play or exchange musical thoughts by actually striking an instrument and, yeah.
Yeah. So how did you connect with the Dance Theater Harlem?
Well, I mean, it's very interesting because I won a scholarship right away after arriving in New York. You know, there is a lady that helped me, and she was from the American Council for the professionals, you know, that arrived, you know, like immigrants. And she actually, you know, auditioned me and told me that she was going to try to get me a scholarship. And she did, you know. I got a scholarship, and then I started learning English at NYU and validating all of my degrees from Cuba. And then one day I went to replace one of the classmates, and she didn't feel well, and she told me, could you replace me? And she gave me the books to go to Harlem. It was the first time I took a train to Harlem. I was very, very intrigued because, I mean, I have seen Harlem in the movies. So therefore I took that train and I went to a school called the Harlem School of the Arts, which at the time the founder was Dorothy Maynard. And I didn't know, I mean, I didn't know anybody. You know, later on, I found out that Dorothy Maynard was a famous singer that created this school in order to provide access of education to, I mean, deprived children, you know, I mean, in other words. And the thing is that I went there to play, and I was playing for this teacher, ballet master, you know, that didn't speak English either. So it was very funny. And because we did everything through rhythm, ta 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 ta, you know, and then I would look into the book, find out, you know, 4/4, 3/4 marches, waltzes. And in one of the instances that I was by myself in the room, you know, I mean, enjoying the baby grand piano, this gentleman went through, and it caught my attention because the way that he was walking and his demeanor. And about 2 hours afterward, because I mean, this was the entire Saturday. It was a Saturday thing. And in one instance that I was actually playing by myself again, the door opened and there was this gentleman, and he approached me, and I told him I didn't speak English, but it didn't matter because I mean, he knew some words in Spanish, some words in Italian, you know, and he sort of like motioned something about playing, you know. And he asked me for the number where I was staying. And about 2 weeks after, somebody called me in Spanish and told me to go to the same place. And I didn't know that that was the turning point of my entire life. Because, you know, I went there, he was there in a room with 4 students, I mean, 4 young ballerinas in a bar in the middle of the room. And I started playing, and he motioned not to use the books, because I borrowed the books from my friend. And he said, no books, you know, play, you know, I mean, so he heard me playing, you know, and I am also an improviser. So that was the beginning of something that I didn't know I was what I was getting into or who I was dealing with, because I didn't know who he was. I mean, you know, he told me his name, and it was like, yeah. So, you know, I found out who he was, you know, after several, you know, classes. He talked to me about a project he had in mind, you know, at least, I mean, to the ballerinas also. I mean, he told the group that he had a project in mind. And then he gave me a ticket. It was the first time I went to Lincoln Center. Oh. And then, you know, to New York City Ballet. And then I opened the program, and there was his picture. I said, oh, wow. And then the curtain was up, and there was on stage. You know, and that's how I found out that I was dealing with somebody called Arthur Mitchell. You know, I mean, the first, you know, soloist of color of the New York City Ballet. And of course, I mean, then I was introduced to Balanchine. And besides that, when I heard that, you know, most of the ballets that he was actually dancing were written by Stravinsky. Stravinsky was alive. You know? Oh, wow. When I heard that, I said, oh my God. And that's the beginning of the story. Yeah.
Oh, wow. How old were you at that time?
Well, I arrived here a week after actually turning 24 years old.
Wow. Because I can see that, like, yeah, not, yes, when you're young, you don't know who anybody is. And then you're up and like, wow.
Yeah, but I mean, it's the thing is that, as I said, I thought that I was going to be here for, let's say, 6 months,
Okay.
put money together and continue to Paris. But the political situation between Cuba and the United States, you know, I mean, worsened. And, you know, I mean, the thing is that I couldn't travel, I couldn't fly. And the United States told me, you know, that if I stay here for 5 years, I could actually get apply for citizenship and get a passport. And this happened within the year of my arrival. Not even the year of my arrival, I bumped into Arthur Mitchell because I went to replace, you know, a classmate. And this whole thing became what it became, you know. And one, you know, the reason is also that one day, you know, he got very enthusiastic every time we would do a class because, you know, I would create things new and following him and everything. And he said, why don't you write a piece and I am going to actually do a choreography. And that was the first ballet.
Ah.
And at that time, I you know, I had to go to a library, I mean, get theory books, how to compose. I mean, you know, I put a piece by myself. And so, and you know, once I saw the piece on stage and the lights and the audience and everything, that's when I said, I better study composition.
I better learn how to do this.
Exactly.
Wow, because I was going to ask, I mean, because you think of Nadia Boulanger as a composer and you think of all these people going to go learn composition, but you really had thought of piano.
No. I wanted to be the second Martha Argerich of Latin America, you know, because that was a model that I loved. You know, I loved her playing and her temperament and everything, you know, but no, I mean, you know, in Cuba, I did some songs with my brother because my brother had sort of like an ensemble. And, you know, I mean, with that ensemble, he would play birthdays and things and you know, and I was part of his ensemble and we would rotate. Sometimes I would play the drums or I would play the bass drum. I mean, the upright bass and, you know, yeah.
Oh, wow. Wow. So it was like you had a spark, but Arthur Miller needed to light that spark. He must have seen that spark in you too, obviously.
Yes, he was a visionary of many people because I mean, the same thing that happened to me, it happened to other people. He would see in you something that he saw in me, something that definitely I didn't see myself. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Now you've had, okay, so you do a lot of things, but I think I probably will talk about, I'm looking, there's a question about composing. We'll go straight to composing, then I'll loop back to the other stuff that you've done. So we have a question about when you compose, how do you learn to hear the orchestra in your head before you write down your music? And then does it ever sound differently in reality than you expected it?
Well, you know, it's interesting because, I mean, I started studying music when I was 4 years old, you see. And I always tell my friends or students, I said, I have a Casio in my head. You remember the Casio?
Yes, yeah.
Keyboards that people, you know, got so fascinated about it, you know. So therefore, I can write without using a piano. It's what I hear, I go to the paper.
Okay.
But I have to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I don't hear it, I don't feel well. I get very nervous. It's like having a radio in your home, in your head, and you hear all these things.
Mm-hmm.
So I write them down. You know, it's like if you're going to write a letter, you don't know. I mean, you're thinking and your hand is going,
Mm-hmm.
and you write the letter. So that's how I write music.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was wondering that as you were composing the Sahes.
pasajes, yes.
Like, how do you compose? Did you write it like a year ago and then just kept tweaking, or was it in your head? And like, what is your process?
Right. My process is that, for example, if I want to write a piece, I mean, sometimes I don't have the title. Sometimes the title comes out afterwards.
Okay. All right.
But no, in this one, I had a title, because I knew what I wanted to do. And the thing is that I could be in the grocery store, and all of a sudden I hear some of this music that I have been thinking of, and I grab, and I usually have a pad with me, but otherwise, I grab a piece of paper and I put that, what I heard right there. So by the time, I mean, this is one of the processes. That doesn't mean that it's always like that. By the time I get to do the piece, I have a lot of sketches that I have been collecting for a month, 2 months, I mean, whether it's in a plane or in a park, or, whatever I hear, since I am focusing on that, I trust that this is part of the piece. And then after that, it's like a puzzle. I actually get all these sketches, and I start connecting one with the other and one with the other, and I start putting this puzzle together. And sometimes, I mean, what I think that is the end is not the end, that's the beginning. And what I think that is the beginning, no, that's the middle. I mean, and I start creating the structure of the piece that way.
Fascinating.
Yes, it's very strange,
Yeah. And have you always composed like that? Is that been your process?
I compose, yes, from my head, yes. And, I mean, sometimes I put these things together, and then I might go to the piano and check the sketches, and things like that, but not because I sit at the piano and I develop entire piece, no. For me, I mean, the piece is uniquely my own, when I hear it and when I feel it. That's another thing. I feel the piece. Strange. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. Okay. So I know. So you have these commissions, and so what happens? What happens if you have a commission? And do you ever have writer's block?
Yes, it has happened. It has happened, and let me tell you something. For the first time in my life, it happened towards the end of last year. But there have been a lot of things, I've lost a lot of friends to COVID, including my half brother in Cuba.
I'm so sorry.
And I mean, my family is in different countries, I mean, we have been navigating this thing through Zoom or through calling each other. I mean, the situation with my other brother was horrible, And so it seems to me that approaching the end of the year, or approaching, approaching Christmas, approaching, I mean, the conclusion, I mean, it's like my head was totally empty.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was like, dun, dun, where's the music? I was like really panicky because I've never experienced something like that.
Oh, gosh.
Yes. So I think that it had to do a lot with emotions, and also towards the end of the year, a very close friend, I don't know if you know her, but she was, at one point, she was the director of the Latin American Center in Indiana. And we were very close when I did the Festival of Latin American Music with the American Composers Orchestra. We were very close, and I found out that she was leaving Earth, and I was able to talk to her,
Right.
But I didn't know that was happening because she never told anybody that she was so sick.
Oh, wow.
That was just the top, the culmination of all these bottled up emotions, So now I think that was actually the first time in my life.
Wow.
Now I understand, when friends of mine, poets, writers, and, and other composers and everything, I have writer's block. I said, really? And you know, now I said, I know what it is.
Well, thankfully, it took you a very long time to have it, though.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I never had experience, you know, and I think that it was emotional because, I mean, the pandemic, I mean, have done a lot of things to people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, we see all these strange behaviors sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
and it has to do with that type of what we have gone through is amazing, you know, and then, you know, you lose colleagues and things like that, and it have been tough. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've listened to, it's not, obviously I haven't listened to it with the whole orchestra, but I did get to listen to the piece, I guess on the MIDI anyway, and it's beautiful. And yes, and I think our audience is really going to enjoy it because I'm thinking about everything that we've been through and the way that piece, it's got a lot of beauty and it's got a lot of rhythm, and I just think it'll be a lovely, just a great way to release some of the stress that we've been suffering through over the last couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah.
One thing, I was listening to it, and so I confess I didn't look at your program notes before I listened to it. So when I was listening to it, I heard one thing, and then I read the program notes, and I was like, oh, I can hear that too. So I guess, one of the questions that I was thinking about was, when you were writing, do you think about your audience, or are you just writing what's in your head, or when you put your music out there, do you have something that you want your audience to experience? Are you hoping they experience X or Y?
Well, I hope that they experience the sounds, you know. I mean, I respect program notes, but program notes are always a very telegraphic rendition of perhaps an idea, you see.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really, you know, I mean, who can describe anything? I mean, can you describe, I mean, Beethoven's Clair de Lune Sonata? Or can we describe Debussy Clair de Lune? I mean, you know, but in other words, can we describe it? No. I mean, yeah, we talked about Eroica by Beethoven because, I mean, it's his own emotional relationship with Napoleon, for example, you see. And we know about Napoleon's at the beginning and then Napoleon at the end, and that is Eroica in a way, you see. His reflection about this moment in time in history and what this figure represented for him. And so we associated the music. When we hear the music, it's like, in a way, a narrative. You know, before we hear the music, we sort of like have that consciousness. But I would love audiences, and at least in my humble opinion, just to listen and create their own panoramic view of the sound without my intervention. Because if I'm going to start explaining the piece, so I don't really know what I'm explaining. It's hard, and of course, I mean, I'm not going to be talking academically speaking, talking about, you know, where's the quarter note and the time signature of the, no, because that would never make contact with an audience, whether it is an audience that have gone through a conservatory experience or not. You're talking about audiences in general. I think that music is actually one of the tools that we have for the power of listening. You know, so it's the deep listening, it's listening inside. Yeah.
Yeah, because when I was listening to, again, it'll sound much better with a real orchestra, but it brought different moments of my life, is what I was hearing, different experiences my own, but other people have that too, or when I listen to it 10 years later, I will have it will probably hit me in a different way as well then too.
Yeah. And I specifically with something that is new, I mean, we have a tremendous intervention about visuals. You see, we have heard the most incredible or complex scores through visuals, you know, and that is how Ligeti became so famous with Odyssey 2001, that movie that had his score behind it, you know, that if people heard the score without the movie, perhaps they would not have reacted that way.
Yeah.
Because his music is challenging, you see. And yet with the movie, it was like it became part of the movie, and now people, and it's the same thing that happened with the Rite of Spring. The Rite of Spring, now everybody listens to the Rite of Spring, but remember that even in Fantasia, the movie, you know, Fantasia uses some of the Rite of Spring. So therefore, I mean, the association of the sound became something different because there was something visual stimulating or accompanying the sound. So what I'm saying is that when we listen to music deeply, there might be images, you know, that are like the images that we see on the screen, but we can actually connect with those images in the inner screen, you know, in our inner screen. So who knows, you know, I mean, when people listen to something like that, what they are going to imagine. It's going to be very different from me to the person that is sitting next to me or the one that is behind me, or yeah. Well, I mean, that's what I think, that the power of listening, you know, elicits in every human being. Yeah.
Okay, so one of the questions in here is, other than yourself, who is your favorite living composer? So,
Other than myself?
Yeah, other than you, who is your favorite living composer?
Well, you know, I have a very different relationship with composers. I'm saying that because I love composers, you see, and every composer is a different language. It's like loving languages. I love languages. I can go to a place where they don't speak the languages that I speak, and I am fascinated, you know, because of the sound, because, you know, I mean, it's the syntax, you know, the cadences, all of that. Same thing I feel about composers. For example, you know, when I graduated from NYU, that got my degree, since then, I only had one teacher, that was Ursula Mamlock, and she was originally from Berlin. She was German, and she died about 8-10 years ago. And the thing is that after that, I decided to study with as many composers possible.
Right.
That means, you know, I wanted to study, you know, for example, the music of Andriessen, and I would get all of these scores of Andriessen and listen to all the music, you know. And of course, you know, I conduct as well. So therefore, if I had the chance to conduct Andriessen and Ligeti and Gubaudulina or John Tower, you see, like getting inside their world. It's another sonic world, you know, and see the engineering of the piece is something that is fascinating. You see, it's like getting into the mind of another creator of music, whether it's Bach or Beethoven. I mean, it's like, for example, when I was a student, I couldn't stand Bach. Oh please, you know, because I had to learn all those fugues, do the counterpoint. I mean, where's the primary line? I mean, the second line, you know, it was like, you know, I couldn't take it, you know something? If we're going to talk about favorite composer, he's my numero uno.
Wow.
I mean, what he did with the same pitches that we all work with. Tonality, of course, in tonal music, you see? Because I mean, it's like how he could write so many fabulous pieces, you know? I mean, the conversation, the dialogue, everything that's going on in those pieces is like, oh my God, you see? And yet, one of my teachers introduced me to the music of Bela Bartok.
Okay.
And for me, it was like, oh, this is interesting. It was not, I didn't shy it away, to learn the microcosmos.
Yep.
Oh, for me, it was like, wow, this is interesting. So for me, I mean, all composers offers something, and in all genres of music. That's another thing. I'm not a specific into only concert music or jazz or this. No. All of them offer for me a source of information and learning.
Mm-hmm.
And the only one that I haven't tackled yet is that when I was in China, I had the opportunity to specifically listen to an improviser of the Peking Opera.
Okay.
And it blew me away.
Oh, wow.
Completely. It's another musical language,
Mm-hmm.
which is actually totally microtonal.
Okay.
And to know that this woman was improvising and doing what she does, and I didn't understand anything that was going on. I mean, musically speaking, you
Right.
see?
Yeah.
Really another language, another musical language.
Right.
Which is something that I would really like to study and see what, how is that done? Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. I haven't listened to, anyway, I haven't listened to as much of it as I should have, but now you've got me intrigued. But yes. Wow. So if I was getting, one of the questions I was thinking of was, you've done so much. You're a conductor, you are an advisor, you're an artistic advisor, you're a composer. And if I was getting inside your head, do you need to, do you take a couple of years to do conducting and then a couple of years to do composing, or how do you do all this? What's happening?
No. I mean, it's, no, for example, I premiered an opera only a week and a half ago. I mean, by Mary Watkins, which is a composer that lives actually in the Bay Area. And but she is actually, she is about 83 years old. And it was wonderful. I mean, she did an opera, about the life of Emmett Till.
Oh.
Yes. And they called me because, she thought that I could do a good job, and I know her work and things like that. And I did. Yeah. And I was happy to be able to do it. I mean, for another composer, which is a colleague, that I admire. And so, that is that. And for example, next month, I'm going to be in Germany with Ensemble Modern. Ensemble Modern is a sort of like a premier ensemble of contemporary music, that's going to be in Frankfurt. Yeah. So, it rolls. It's being a musician. I see it that way. Being a musician, and I'm very pleased because, as I mentioned to you, I have been having great conversations with Akiko, which is going to actually premiere my piece. And it has been wonderful, talking to a colleague and discussing possibilities and having that conversation that is so important for us to have as musicians, regardless of what the role of us may be at a given time. So that's how I see it. I'm basically a musician that happens to do this and that and that and that and that. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. So speaking of Akiko, so I've always loved working with living composers just because I find it so much fun. And then at the rehearsal experience, you can't say, hey, Beethoven, what'd you think about, why'd you put this together? You're going to be coming to our rehearsals here. How does your process work? What will happen at those rehearsals?
Well, it depends. A primary Akiko is in charge, you see. And of course, if she asks me any questions or the musicians ask me any questions, and I will be able to intervene and explain to them, if there is a passage that might be, challenging, how to approach it. If there is a need for me to do that, if Akiko hasn't already discussed that, which I believe that she's super prepared.
Uh-huh.
The discussions that we have had are just fantastic. I really feel so great. We are collaborating with her. And but that is a process that I think it's the most natural one, because we are discussing things. Okay, I created this, but now this is being actually discovered by someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And in that discovery, there might be something that someone else points it out that never crossed my mind, because it's another perspective. You see?
Right.
Yeah, and specifically on a brand new piece. It's not Beethoven's Fifth Symphony,
No.
No, I mean, we have heard that, I don't know, 1 million times. I have no idea.
Right.
But yeah.
So the project that we're in now with Amplifying Voices, this one's interesting in that this piece is going to be played by at least 4 other orchestras as part of this grant. Is that new? How do you feel about that?
Oh no, I think that is wonderful. It's wonderful because there's a big movement now about giving voice to the voices of our time. I call it the voice because the voice of a composer is unique. It's uniquely that composer. And to have the opportunity to have composers now being heard in different parts of the country, fantastic. And to have a piece also actually, besides the premiere, be played several times, that is a luxury. And that's why I mentioned Beethoven, because how many times the Symphony No. 5 have been played all over the world, you see? Right. So the more that you play something, the more that habitually is received by the listener. And the more that the listener start knowing the piece, and the more that the piece becomes easy to listen. Because so there is then the experience it's an experience that is recreated many times, and I think that is happening now more and more with our orchestras in the nation, that the composers are actually starting to have a real presence, not because they didn't have it before, but now as far as the living composers are taking very seriously. Yeah.
Yeah, I always found that weird, but I'm glad that New Music USA has figured it out. Like, we would commission something and it was played once and then that was it. And I thought, how sad is that? Like, it's great that it was written and we've paid somebody, a composer, we've supported composers, but it would make it just seems so much better to have it performed by as many orchestras as humanly possible.
And that is one luxury that perhaps poetry has, because a poet might recite the poetry and then someone might recite the poetry of that poet, but you don't need an orchestra for that. It's just a human being reciting words and people listening, whether it's radio, television, or in person. But an orchestra, you have to start thinking about 60, 70 musicians. So, that is something that we understand also. So it's a matter of seeing how we can actually make this system work in such a way that audiences would feel that an orchestra is good to support, because it's bringing a type of poetry that is constituted by many musicians at the same time, as opposed to only one person. So, that is something that I feel that that we are getting now for the first time to make a big push, specifically to find out what are the voices or the composers in the nation. You know, I mean, you know, where and who are the composers in Arkansas? Who are the composers in the Bay Area? Who are the composers in New York? Of course, I mean, New York is a lot of people because, I mean, composers think New York is a Mecca, you know, so let me go over there. You see,
Mhm.
the thing is not that, but I mean, there's composers of many, many, many aspects. There's the composer that we call concert music, you know, but there's a composer also that writes for film, and the composers that write for musical theater. And there's, I mean, there is a lot of people producing music,
Mhm.
you know, and it would be fantastic to know the scope of composers, not only one type of composer, but the people that are making the nation listen to sounds.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, we are not nothing without music. I mean, you get into an elevator and there's music in the elevator.
Mhm.
I mean, or you call, I mean, they put you on hold, you know, and you're listening to music. I mean, and so all this music have been written by someone.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I have a 15-year-old who always has her earbuds in listening to music. So
That's good. Great.
yeah.
Huh?
Well, and when you're here, I'm excited. It seems like we have a handful of composers from Arkansas, younger composers that will be working with you to pick your brain or get your advice when you're here next week. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah,
Uh,
me too.
yeah. And then like in Arkansas, one of the things that we have is the Ozarks. So we have a lot of bluegrass tradition here as well. So
Oh, I love that.
uh,
Uh-huh.
so okay, so I have a question. So I was looking at your background. You've worked with your opera, you did an opera with Robert Wilson.
Yes.
What was that like?
Amazing. Amazing, amazing. That opera has not been done in the United States, but we did it in Europe. Yeah. And the opera was premiered first in Germany and then actually Switzerland.
Oh,
And then we went to France, and from France to Austria, and from Austria to Mexico. Yes, yes, we did 21 performances of the piece. Mhm.
oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So was your music in Robert Wilson staging or?
Robert went to staging, doing the lights, you know, I mean, the direction, of course, you know, he did everything, you know. The first performance actually was Mark, I'm sorry, you know, I don't remember right now.
It was a while back. It was in the 90s, I think.
Right. But that was actually in the festival of the Hans Werner Henze,
Oh,
which was actually who commissioned the whole thing. Hans Werner Henze was a very, very important composer, German composer,
okay.
that actually backed up a lot of composers from the United States, including David Lang.
Oh,
Oh, yes, and Leroy Jenkins. And, you know, so he took me under his wing, and he's the one that commissioned me an opera. And he said, you know, I would like for you to write an opera. I said, me? Opera? Oh, no. No, you crazy. He said, oh, yeah, you can write an opera. And he convinced me because, I mean, never crossed my mind. I mean, opera, first of all, it's a big undertaking. And then production, and then all the people, and, you know, I mean, and who's going to pay for all that?
mm-hmm.
You see,
Yeah.
but he made it happen, you know, and it did very well. And they got the award of the festival. And then from there, you know, Robert Wilson got involved. And then we all opened at a beautiful theater, which is on top of a lake in the Forces Motrices, is called, in Switzerland, in Geneva, Switzerland.
It sounds heavenly. I mean, it just sounds like utopia to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
You've worked with, okay, I'm gonna double check. Okay. All right, I'm going to go to those questions in a second, but I was going to, you've worked with all these interesting people, Robert Wilson, Stravinsky, Arthur Miller. Is there anyone that's like your favorite, or is there, I don't know. Is there anybody?
Well, I didn't work with Stravinsky. No,
Okay.
I didn't, he was alive. And that's how I found out, all the different tentacles of Arthur Mitchell, that the ballets, he died about 6 or 7 years. I'm talking about Stravinsky after my arrival. So I didn't have a chance to really, work with him. However, I worked with Balanchine because Balanchine taught me all of those ballets that we were doing, that was his choreographer. I had to actually be coached by Balanchine and also Jerome Robbins. Same, yes. But I mean, of all of these people that have been fortunate to work with, the one that I will never forget is working with Marian Anderson. She was the narrator of one of my ballets.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And of course, I didn't know who she was. And I was told, and then I went to, see clips and of her singing in Washington and the whole thing. And then I found out, I didn't know. I had no idea all the people that were coming in. And, we were coached by Cicely Tyson, in terms of how to present ourselves on stage and how to bow and, all these things. And working with actually Leontine Price. Yes, Jesse Norman.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, Marian Anderson, I know we think of her with a Little Rock connection, and that Florence Price is from Little Rock. And one of the songs that Marian Anderson sang was a Florence Price work. On those steps of Washington.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. 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 Incredible. I mean, I walked into history without knowing what was happening. I was finding out every time. And the more English that I was speaking, the better it got, because I was doing sort of like research about all these people. But that was that's the first 12 years of my being in this country. Was actually, all this flood of all these people from Lena Horne, including Michael Jackson, all these people. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Balanchine, Marian Anderson, and Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson, and then we went to South Africa, and that was also a very big thing, meeting Nelson Mandela.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. No, it's an incredible history. All of us, the founder members, that that period was a period where everybody wanted to help make Dance Theater of Harlem what has become.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. Wow. Mm-hmm. A good friend of mine is with Step Africa, and I know he took Step Africa. South Africa was one of the places that he went to first, but they've now toured the world. Anyway, I was just thinking about, wow, dance, music.
Yeah. No, it's an incredible experience. Mm-hmm. It was an experience. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
One thing I'm struck by is that all of these different experiences, none of them would have happened if you hadn't just said yes. Like, you're saying yes to these things. Like, your friend is sick, you're like, yeah, I can go do that. Oh, Arthur Miller, yeah, okay, I can do this. Like, if you were going to give a message to somebody, what do you think it would be?
I don't know if it had to do with the factor that I have just arrived and I had to make something happen, or I had to survive in a way, because, because I remember that meeting Ursula for the first time. And then he called and he said, come to the same place. I went to the same place where we met. And there I was playing in that room with him over there. And I didn't know who I was playing with. I thought that he was another ballet teacher, you see, but not the statue of this person. So I started, the more I, then everything started revealing itself. It's like when Lena Horne came to talk to us, I didn't know who she was. No, I didn't know who anybody was. So, I mean, the dancers would tell me, this, blah, blah, or, and there was always somebody that was spoke in Spanish. So they would tell me, and then that is when my eyes started like, oh my goodness, yeah, it was incredible and very fortuitous, because this happening, let's say 10 months after my arrival, that I met Arthur.
That's wonderful.
Strange, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, there's a couple questions here. Do you listen to music for fun? If so, what do you enjoy?
Everything. I tell some friends of mine that I could conduct Stravinsky, play Shostakovich, but I dance salsa. Yes. Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. I mean, it's not that the dance comes out of, my relationship with Dance Theater of Harlem. No, it's that I grew up in a culture where dancing is very important, mm-hmm. and we dance all the local pieces, all the different rhythms, and even when I was with Dance Theater of Harlem, we would do the ballet. But then, I mean, we will hang out and they would teach me the latest steps, or whichever music was going on, I listened to rap and hip hop, everything, because everything, at least in my estimation, has a certain musical complexity that I love to see how it works. Mm-hmm. All those rhythmical polyrhythmia, it is very, very intriguing to me, and it gives me a lot of knowledge. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's technique anyway. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Here's an interesting question. How would you describe your style? Who are your influences?
Oh my goodness. No, yeah, I love that question. Let me tell you, I have my own voice. I believe that I have my own voice, you see. But my voice is a result of a question by my father, you see. In the longest time, I was not allowed to go to Cuba because everybody that left Cuba at that time became persona non grata to Cuba, you see. So it took me 12 years before I was allowed to go back. And then that's how I saw my father with white hair, and there were newcomers in the family, people that have been born. And that's the first time that, my nephew Alain told everybody that I talk funny. And the thing is that, of course, my Spanish have changed, or my syntax or whatever. Mm-hmm. And at first I got very sentimental, but then I realized, that if you live elsewhere outside of the culture, you become something else. And then when you come back, the people in the culture recognize that you are funny, as we said. But in the last conversation I had with my father, which I didn't know it was going to be our last conversation, my father heard my music and he said, your music is very, very interesting, but where are you in your music? You see? Mm-hmm. And I didn't understand what he meant. So I left, and we never elaborated what he meant with that. And unfortunately, he had a stroke or a big, massive thing, and he died. So I had never the chance to discuss with him what did he mean, where are you in your music? Right. So it made me think a great deal and reflect. And the first piece that I wrote dedicated to him after his passing, it's 4 pieces for cello and for cello solo. And in one of the movements, I started doing some kind of syncopated tricks that actually were dictated to me by the way that he walked.
Oh, wow.
I started thinking about the way that he walked, and I took those rhythms and I started molding those rhythms and realized that those rhythms were a little bit related to the rhythmical patterns of the music of Cuba. You see? I started sort of like, and I let it be. I put it into the piece, I mean, I make the cellists actually play pizzicato, bang the cello, like a cello was a percussion instrument and all that. And the piece became a hit. All the cellos wanted to play that piece, maybe because all of that, and that is how I started sort of like creating my world of influences, you see, allowing how much I knew about the music of the region, which I was not really using in the music that I was actually, because I mean, at the time I was studying, at that time it was 12-tone serialism. I mean, all of these techniques, that were so complex, very complicated, and pointillism, all of that was actually in the pieces that were required at the time in academic studies.
Right.
And that's what my father heard. Heard that, he didn't recognize me in there. And I think that's my answer. That's why he said, "Where are you in your music?" It's like, I don't find you there, And so I honor him by saying and telling the story to everybody that he's the one that, I mean, gave me an incredible inheritance, with that statement, because it made me realize that I could do more with my sound than all the strictness that I have placed in order to be accepted,
right,
by the academical requirements of the moment.
Yeah.
And so I liberated myself and I started writing what I wanted to actually say in my music, my own way. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. Oh, that was beautiful. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just, that's so, I mean, and it fits, everyone's talking now about authenticity and being brave, and your music is, oh, what a beautiful story and what a beautiful tribute to your dad.
Thank you.
We are at the end. It's 1 o'clock already.
You're kidding.
No. Is there anything you want to say before we say goodbye, or until we see each other again?
Yes, of course. Yes.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Well, I know. Well, I am very thrilled that now we are going to actually leave the world of Zoom and see each other in person.
Yes.
And because I mean, everything that we've done have been on Zoom. Yeah. And that's how I met you. And I mean, to get to see you face to face, and the musicians in the orchestra, and even Akiko, because everything with Akiko have been over the phone. And the region and the new composers, the young composers, which we learn a great deal from them, because they are the freshest minds coming up now, and there's so much going on. Technology, there is the toy makings that actually are being part now of some scores. And there's so much going on that the world is going to create something that 20 years from now, it will be accepted by everybody, you know.
Mhm.
It's like the period when electronic music became part of the dialogue. And
Right.
everybody was like, oh my God, what's that? You know, and that was the 1960s, 70s, you know, and then,
Mhm.
I mean, minimalism with Philip Glass and Steve Reich and John Adams, and, you know, and everybody like, oh my God, you know, there's always something, you know, every 20 years, you know, and the new generation now, I mean, they're coming up with some spectacular ways of unifying all of these different forces.
Mhm.
That is something that I'm very looking forward to hearing what they have to say. It's not what I have to say. It's what are they saying
Right.
that can be done with the music in the world. Yeah. Mhm.
Oh, fascinating. I can't wait.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much. And thank you to everyone that participated and was here today. And we have recorded this and we'll probably just put it on our website too, for other people to watch later. To get ready for your performance or the concert, to hear your music.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All
Yeah.
right.
Looking forward. Yeah.
Tanya, and safe travels here next week.
Thank you. Thank you. I look forward to seeing you. Yeah.
Right.